Okay, so today I am going to talk about an important segment of the pyramid text. Is called the Cannibal hymn. The Cannibal hymn is a very unusual text because it talks about cannibalism in a very graphic way, in a very concrete way, and it sort of takes you by surprise when you read about it first, because you wondered, well, did the ancient Egyptians eat other people? But if you take a little bit of a closer, even just a little bit of a closer look at the original text, and you don't just look at the modern translations, English, German, French, whatever, then you realize that this is really a metaphor for learning, and what is being learned here by the spirit of the deceased king or queen is magic, Heka magic. I think in the last video I may have made a mistake saying that the east gable of the antechamber is unique to Unas. So that's not completely correct. It's actually written. It's found in both Unas and Teti's pyramid. So it's not unique to Unas. The west gable, most of it is unique to Unas. But so it's still pretty unique. So for some reason, the Cannibal hymn was left out by the later scribes who filled the pyramids with texts. But in this pyramid, we have the first version of it. So I'm going to take you back into virtual Unas as usual to show you the place where we're going to analyze today. And so as usual, I'm going to come into the pyramid from the north, from the main entry. And so we're going to walk into the antechamber, and we're looking at the south wall here. This is the south wall. And the south wall, I'm just going to recap this a little bit because this is setting the stage for the gable, which is up here on the east wall. So what was the theme of this entire wall? Was basically a journey up from the horizon next to the Milky Way in my reconstruction, next to Orion, next to the constellation Taurus, all the way up to the ecliptic, and then traveling on the ecliptic from west to east. So from west to east, tolls the sun and tolls Horachti, which is the celestial sphinx, the constellation Leo. This is Robert Bouval's insight. And I think he's absolutely correct, because it makes perfect sense when you project this text against the sky, and then you can recapitulate, reconstruct this journey on the ecliptic. And so this journey happens on a boat, this boat appears to be the moon ferry. And what I was pointing out last time is that the interesting way that this is written here is going from west to east, that this is probably the waning moon, right? So the waning moon is traveling on the ecliptic day by day, advances from one constellation, ecliptic constellation, which is the zodiac constellation, to the next, going in a west to east direction. So every day you have another slice of sky where the moon is traveling towards the sunrise, towards the east. And as the moon does that, its shape begins to dwindle. So this is called the waning moon. And of course, eventually the moon will be in conjunction with the sun, and that's what we call new moon. So this is something important for you to keep in mind, because there's something fascinating that comes up here now on the east gable. And so we begin the text after this text completes. Down here, the next text passage where we continue reading is now this column here, which is the first column of the east gable of the antechamber. So this is what we're going to do. Now, this is of course quite a long text. So what I decided to do is to present this in 3 segments. So today's segment is going to cover approximately the first third of this, up to, I think it's going to be about here. And then the second part, which I'm going to record maybe tomorrow, is going to cover this segment here, up to here, something like that. And this is the main section that talks about the gory details of the cannibalism. But as I was showing you in the last video from yesterday, this is really a disguised consumption of consumption, meaning learning of Heka magic, and this may also be a vision that by the author, whoever wrote this, must have been under the influence of some kind of brew, describing the sky vision right here in the central column. And if you remember, this is communicating directly with the opposite gable on the west side, where the central column is talking about perception. So we have here the personified perception at the prow of the solar boat, and then here we have altered perception, possibly enhanced by consumption of some kind of lily alkaloids, a brew that was composed with wine and the Egyptian lily and some grain. And so this may have induced some kind of vision of the sky, rotating sky, which is mentioned right here. And then comes the after effect in terms of vomiting from the alkaloids, which are chemicals basically that are contained in psychedelic substances. And then here, this last bit, I'm going to talk about in part 3 then. And so here is something that I recently published. It has to do with a very interesting Heka insinuation of a cavern through which the spirit has to traverse on its last station. And that cavern, in my reconstruction, is the original cavern of creation. And by going through that cavern and basically meeting the original gods, the primordial gods of creation, the Unas is basically able to then get sort of propelled into the sky with this final encounter with creation magic, which is basically the Egyptian version of Logos. And that is described down here on the east wall. And this is where the Ka completes its journey. And then the Ba completes its journey here on the north wall and eventually here in the entry wall. So this is something I'm going to cover at another time. So this is just to give you the overall context of what's written on what wall. And so today we're going to talk about this wall, and we're specifically this first part of it. Okay, so let's leave the virtual pyramid of Unas, and let me show you. Let me show you these. Let me show you the wall in a more up close way. So here's the hieroglyphic text, and so this is it's a high resolution photo, but as you can see, you can't make out the symbols all too well, especially here in this first segment. There's here a crack through the stone, and so I have a little bit of a better image here. This is again from the Piankoff series, from Alexandre Piankoff's survey, the epigraphic survey of the Unas pyramid. And these photos are taken by L.F. Husson under the supervision of Natasha Rambova. She was a Hollywood set designer and actress from the 1920s and 30s, and she struck up a friendship with Alexandre Piankoff, and the two of them ended up together in Egypt inside the Pyramid of Unas, and she ended up producing these amazing images. So on these images, you're going to be able to see much better what's written. And I'm going to take you through everything that you see on this image. And so these are basically the first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 columns. And there's 36 total. So this is approximately a third of the text. Okay. So let me start. And this is a very vivid imagery that some of the text is not that easy to translate. So of course, I'm trying to stay as close as possible to James Allen's translation, but I want to show you where the translation comes from, and then I may here and there have some of my own thoughts about it. And you take it at face value. You may agree, you may disagree, but I have some observations that you may not be able to get from the English translation unless you see the original hieroglyphic. So, all right, let's get going. So this first, you have to this takes a little bit of time to do this step by step. So forgive me if it's a bit too slow, but I'm going to try to give you a good pace as I'm going along. So anyways, and I'll try to also teach a little bit hieroglyphic to the extent that I know it, so that you can learn a little bit how to read this. So this is a butcher block, and this stands for the letter G. and that's a seating block that stands for the letter P. So what you're looking at, the images, is not what matters. It's the sound of the symbol that matters. So this sound of this is G, and the sound of that is P. So this means gep. This is a determinative sign that explains in what context this word should be read. So in this particular context, it has to do with cloudiness. So cloud, gep, pet means the cloudiness is the sky. So the sky is clouded, basically. So we're getting a bad weather. Aihi sebau. Aihi sebau means stars. Aihi means darkened, obscured. So we have cloudy weather. The stars are basically obscured by the clouds. And then it says nem. So this is N, this is M. The owl is for M. The water line is N. So nem. And this sign is a biliteral. A biliteral is a sign that encodes two consonants instead of just one. Like these here, that's a monoliteral. That's another monoliteral. So N and M. And this is basically just a combination of the two, nem. And this is a blade, basically. So the blade stands for nem. And so why did the Egyptians do this? Well, it's sort of double stitched. It's basically, using a biliteral, but then also spelling it out so that there's no doubt how this is supposed to be pronounced. So nem. And what that means is to wobble, to have an unsteady gait. And that's why you have this determinative here of the two legs, so that the context of this nem is made clear to have something to do with gait, with stands. So, and that's how you come up with this translation: wobble, unsteady gait. So, and then in grammar, Egyptian grammar, usually the predicate, the verb, which in the sentence functions as the predicate, the action, comes first, and then comes the noun later. So this is unlike English, where you say the vaults of the sky wobble. So in hieroglyphic, you say just the opposite: wobble the vaults of the sky. So this is pronounced pedjet, P, just like this P, gep, pe. The cobra snake is pronounced je, and this is T, so pedjet. And because we have three symbols here, it's actually not just one vault or one dome or one arc, but it's multiple, plural. It's not three, it just means plural instead of singular. So the way you pronounce this is pejut. Pejut means vaults or domes, sky vaults, sky domes. So what this means is basically we have a cloudy sky, the stars are faded or obscured, and the vault, the domes of the sky are wobbling. Okay, so there's some kind of commotion going on. And then we have seda, this is S, the hand is D, the vulture is A, is A. So seda, and here's the determinative, which is the egret. Now this is an interesting word because seda is also referring to the phoenix, basically, the Bennu bird. But here it's used in an identical, this is the same exact word, but here it means shivering or quivering. So it's an interesting mimicry. And does this mean that the Bennu bird is being invocated here? It's possible that here we have some kind of imagery that harkens back to the original cry of creation, when the universe was trembling from the original cry of creation of the Bennu bird. It is possible. I'll let you decide. So nem pedjut means the domes of the sky wobble, and then seda, resu, this is re, this is s, and this is plural again. So these are bones. Resu aker. Aker is the double line, which is basically on the back of which the solar boat is traveling to the underworld, right? So there's the lion sign, Aker. It's the conjoined lions. I'm sure you've seen it in this is a symbol that goes all the way back to the first dynasty. It's a very, very old symbol. And it stands for basically the ground on which the netherworld is located. So the bones of Aker, are the bones of Aquaria are quiver or tremble. So there again, so you have this beautiful, you have the sky unsteady, wobbling, and then you have the earth also trembling. So this motion, this commotion is affecting the sky and the earth. Then it says ger. This is I'm sorry. This is G. Ger sen, which means with respect to them. So ger with respect to them. Genemu. The genemu are entities that are in motion, and ger with respect to them means that they stand still. So here we have a beautiful contrast. So things that are usually solid and give you security are shaking and trembling and moving around, and things that are usually moving around are still. So this is an earth-shattering, earth-shaking event that's being announced here. And you might be able to guess what this is, but I'm not gonna take the wind out of the sail of the surprise. So give me a few minutes, and then you'll know immediately why this is happening. So and then here now we get the explanation. It says ma and sen because they see. Sen means they, so this is conjugation, third person plural. Ma and they have seen. So ma means see. Ma en means have seen. So it's basically something that is completed. So it's called the perfect aspect. So have seen, they have seen. What have they seen? Well, unas, there you go. That's the explanation. So unas is basically now emerging, has basically arrived in close to the place where he's traveling on the ecliptic, which is the sun and Horakti, as I mentioned before. So unas, Cha means appear, Ba means his soul, M neter. So they have seen how unas appears, how the Ba of unas appears as a god, neter. Then this is the sign for God or divine, and the divine powers of nature. So God is, this is the modern translation, but the neter sign is the best way to translate it is nature, and nature has many different aspects, different powers. So when you see the flag sign, it is referring to the divine nature. So his soul as a divine nature, in divine form, divine nature, and living in this case, it's not a noun. It's basically it's the predicate of this next subordinated sentence. So it's the soul in its divine appearance. Okay, living from, M means from, ituf. So this is plural. It means father, and because you have three signs, it's father. So it's basically living off his fathers. Okay, so here now we begin to understand why this is called the cannibal hymn, is because it appears to be saying that Unas's soul, the divine appearance of it, is living from his forefathers, okay, in some fashion. Then it says usheb, which means to feed. Usheb means and feeds on, yes, you guessed it, his mothers. M mayutef. Mayu, this is the vulture, the female vulture, and this is because we have three symbols. We talk about the plural, and mayut. This is a help, an aid, basically added so that you pronounce this as mayut and not mayu. So M mayut tef, the F, the snake here refers to masculine singular third person, so it's him, unas. So the divine soul of unas is living from his forefathers and feeding on his foremothers. Okay, and this is why this is called the cannibal hymn. So then it says unas pai. Unas is the one. Neb zabut. So zab means jackal. Zabut is the jackal's nature, which is of course to roam around in the desert and look for carcasses and eat on them. So it's basically a vivid metaphorical way to describe Unas as having a voracious appetite. So Unas Pai, the lord of the jackal's hunger, you could say, and then here now comes an interesting phase. It says chem, en. Chem means ignorant or not knowing of, and this means of or to, but in this case it means of. So chemen means ignorant of, and then here it says mayut, renef. So renef, this is the I sign, which is in this case pronounced as an IR, N, F. Irenef means, I'm sorry, this is not an I, this is a mouth sign. So it's R and N and F. So this means his name. So what this means is that Unas he has this voracious appetite, and but he's ignorant of the name of his mother. Okay. Now this wouldn't make any sense unless you knew that the chief deity in ancient Egypt who does not know his mother is actually the moon god Thoth. So this is the first major, let's say, insinuation where you have to know a little bit about the texts and have to know a little bit of mythology so you'll be able to interpret this correctly. So what this means is that Unas is basically now presenting as himself as Thoth. Okay, and of course this makes sense because he's traveling with Thoth, with the moon across the Milky Way and the waning moon, that is, and so he's presenting himself now to the eastern sky, where we are here. Of course, we are now in the east, and so this insinuation, this little hint here is that Unas is now presenting himself in the shape of the moon, in the shape of the waning moon. So this is very important. And we're going to have the confirmation of this in a few moments. Okay, it goes on with Ayu. Ayu is a sentence piece that is often added in front of a sentence when it is meant, if the sentence is meant to express something that is happening at this very moment, right? So it's the immediacy of the action that you introduce by putting this IU in front of the sentence. But this is usually not actually translated. It's just a marker of immediacy of the predicate of the sentence, but it isn't actually translated, even though it's written. So IU shepesu, that means nobility of Unas, pet is in the sky. So so immediately now we know that we are in the sky. We're not in the earth. Okay, we're in the netherworld sky. Of course, this is still the sky of the netherworld. This is not the day sky. This is still the sky of the netherworld. So so the nobility of Unas is in the sky. Ayu, again the same Ayu. This is a wind, a throat with a jackal head, and that stands for power. User of his power is M in the Achet, in the horizon. Okay, so this is so nobility and power. Nobility in the sky, power in the horizon. Then we keep going, and here it says, this is hard to read, but I happen to know that this says mer, which means like. Me, it could be me, but in old Egyptian texts, it's still written as mer, just like the word for pyramid, but the word for pyramid is spelled differently, but it's pronounced similarly, like mer. But here it says mer with this, this sign is basically I think this is the cow's milk oider. So this is how you pronounce me, but in this case it's mer, like Itef, like his father. So here we had the forefathers on which Unas is living, the spirit of Unas is living, but now the actual father is mentioned. So Itef, Mesu, so basically he's comparing himself, the nobility in the sky and the, the nobility in, nobility, his nobility is in the sky and his power is in the horizon, like his father who bore him, Mesu, Ayu, Mesenef, he has birthed him, or he has, he has given birth to him. But Su User Su Eref, and this is a grammatical device that the Egyptian used for comparison. So we say, in English, we would say he's more powerful than, it's more powerful than, so A is more than B, A is more something than B, and that's how this Eref, that's what this Eref marks. So basically, it says that Unas, that his father has given birth to him, but Unas' power is greater than the power of his father. That's what this means. Next sentence, Ayu Kau. Kau is the life force, and we have 3 Kas, so that means it's plural. Ayu, the Kas of Unas. This is the cartouche of Unas. This here, what you see is a papyrus bunch, and this is pronounced Ha, H-A, half, his, and what Ha means, it means behind, behind Unas. So the Kas of Unas are behind him. Okay, so that means he's the leader in front of the life forces of the netherworld. And then it goes Ayu, and this, I happen to know this, it says Hemsutef, and then it says, this says Sheri Reduif. These are 2 legs. So this, and F means his, so these are his legs. Sher means under, so whatever this is under his legs. So we had the Kas, the life forces behind him, and then we have these Hemsutef, which are basically his servants. Okay, Hemsutef are his servants, and they're under his feet. Not a great place to be. Then Ayu, Neteruf, his gods. So his gods are above him. And of course, what that means, I guess I should take that back. What it means is that Unas is in the sky, and the people that he ruled are obviously under his feet because he's in the sky and they're still on the earth. And his gods are above him. So these are basically nature's powers that are in the sky. So they are, Depef means above, atop or above him. And then here Ayu, Ayarut, this means plural. Here's the cobra on, and this basket sign means that it's a mistress. So the Cobra Mistress is the Ayarut are basically the cobras on that the kings and queens of Egypt were wearing. And so these are protective spirits, basically. So the Ayarut, the cobras, are, where are they? And they are Upetef. Upetef is basically, here, there's different meanings to up and upet, but the determinative, the context sign, which is not pronounced here, you see the hair strand. So this is telling us that this has to do with hair. And so this happens to be braided, knotted hair. And this, because this is sort of the cattle horn sign, so this must have been some braids or some braided hair or knotted hair that was in the front of the forehead, close to the forehead, that sort of acted like horns, right? So these, and that's where these Ayarut, these cobra snakes are. They're basically attached to the king spirit's forelocks. That's how you could call them, forelocks. And this sign becomes important. This very same word becomes important later on in the Cannibal hymn, because it will become a Heka a potential Heka insinuation and Heka invocation of the lily, because the lily is this symbol by itself also has a phonetic value, seshen, and that's the word for lily. And so this may be a way, the forelock is a way to invoke the lily flower. So we're getting into that in the next part when I discuss the middle section of this gable. So anyway, so we have the cobra snakes, the protective spirit snakes on the forelocks of Unas, and then we have the seshem. So this again is a monoliteral, stands for S. This is a folded cloth S. This is shem. It's a biliteral, so it's a knife on legs. Seshem mut. This is a Creole chick, stands for woo, and this is the bread loaf, stands for tea. So seshem ut, seshem mut. Even though this symbol is in front of the bird, because the bird is taller, this is just the way that symbols were written, that you first pronounce the bird and then you pronounce the bread loaf. And this happens typically with the bird signs. There's several bird signs. They kind of lean over a small symbol, and then what you do is you pronounce first the bird and then the small symbol, even though the order is always the way that the symbols are facing. So technically you should pronounce the T first, but this is the exception. When you have bird signs, usually the bird sign is pronounced first. So it's seshemut. And what is a seshemut? Well, here we have another cobra snake, and now this is a single cobra snake. And this is the main cobra on the forehead of the kings and queens. So this is not just any IR root, not just any cobra, but this is the IR root. So this is basically the power device of the royals, and of course, and the gods, the sun, for example. And this is what gives you the power of destruction and the power of creation, both at once. So it's a fire spewing device, and it's also a Heka creation device. So this is the quintessential power symbol of royalty and of divinity. So that's the seshemut. And where is the seshemut? It's Hatef. So Hatef, here's the front portion of the line. This is also a very important symbol, very old symbol. It means the front, and Hat means the forehead in this case. So it's the forehead. His forehead is where this main chief cobra is. So it's beautifully done, right? So on the hair behind the forehead, on the forelocks, you have the IR root, the cobra snakes as a row. And if you remember, for example, in the pyramid, the step pyramid Djoser, there's a wall where you see a whole line of cobra snakes in an upright position, and that you could think of those as the IR root. And then you have the one snake that's in front of it, and that's the seshemut. And then it says here, you see the two eyes. That's this Peter Rui. No, I'm sorry, Peteret Ba. So that refers to the soul, and this is his glance, or his ability to see. So Peteret, his glance or his watchfulness, is with the soul. And then we have Achet and Thebes. And this word, I was not able to find a good translation. Alan has this as spewing fire. I was not able to find this word in a dictionary, so I just have to, take his word for it. I mean, he has other references that he may have identified this, and I also did not find a good substitute for this. So, but I don't think it's that important, but it's basically it generally makes sense, because the cobra, the seshemut, spews fire. It's basically the executive power of the sun god. That's how the sun god exerts his power over the world, by spewing out the fire that warms up the earth, but it can also be destructive. And so that is insinuated or associated with this term And then we have the watchfulness, and that's the I portion, and that goes with the soul. Okay, going on, and then it says Ayu, this is again the jackal head with the throat, Usaru, his powers. Remember that came up over here, the Usersu, his power, and now here are his powers. So the powers of Unas, hair means above. This is a face. When there is a logogram sign, which is a little slash, like we had a slash here with Akeru, right? So here, this slash indicates that this is actually referring to Aker, the double line, and not something else that could be referred to with this word. And so when you see that, it's the logogram sign. So what you see is the actual word that's being intended here. And so, but in this case, we don't have that sign. So hair is not face, or it's not the face in this case, but it's a preposition which is translated as above. So the powers of Unas, Harry Ketef. So above, I'm sorry, not Harry Harry Herai, it's Herai Meketef. Meket is body, and F stands for his, so his body, his powers are above his body. And this this means basically that we're talking about a spirit. We're not talking no longer of the mummy. We're not talking about the physical body that's still in the pyramid. We're talking about the spirit that has elevated itself away from the physical entity. And so that's why his powers are not in the mummy, in the physical body. The powers have now elevated above. And that's what this means, Herai Meketef. Then we go on, it says Unas Pai means Unas is the one, Ka, and Ka is the bull, and the reason, and this is basically, this is the determinative. Ka Pet means the sky bull. Ka P Pet, right? So it's a little bit crammed up here, but this is the P sign that we have here. We have the P in all kinds of places. So this is P, this is T. So Ka, these are determinatives that tell us that we're not talking about life force right now. We're talking about the bull. This is the same word, but it means bull in this case. And then we're talking about pet. So it's the bull of the sky, and here's the sky context sign that tells us that with pet, that the text is referring to the sky. So Unas is the one, the bull of the sky, and then it says NHD, Nehed M. This is the heart sign. This is a logogram, and then F his. So it means Nehed M Ibef. Nehed means rage, anger, aggressiveness. Nehed, rage is a good word. So rage is, I think, what Alan is using. Nehed, rage in his heart. So he's coming out full swinging. He's got his powers attached to him as a spirit. He's in the sky, and he's coming out with an aggressive stance like a bull, projecting his power. And then it says Anch em Cheper. So this is the same Anch that we have here. So this meant who lives from. M means from, in this case, his forefathers, Ituf, and in this case we say, it says Anch em Cheper. This is the dung beetle, and it's a triliteral in this case, and it also it's pronounced Cheper, and here is an R that helps us to pronounce this triliteral. So Cheper, the word means appearance, and Cheper, it specifically refers to the appearance. It can be any appearance, but specifically it's the morning sun. It's the early morning sun as it rises over the eastern horizon. That's the Cheper appearance of version. I mean, it's the Cheper manifestation of the sun. Ra is the midday sun, and Atum is the evening sun. So those are the three manifestations or aspects of the sun. So in this case, So what it is saying is, so he's coming out as the sky bull with rage in his heart, living from the morning, the dawn appearance of and of the god, and this is hard to see. I think this is a neb sign. The Lord. It's, I don't think it's a basket case, so this would be a neb. Yeah, maybe he's living off the Lord. I think that's what this means. He's living off the Lord. So now we had cannibalism, eating his forefathers and foremothers, and now we come to find out that it's not just people that are being eaten, quote unquote, but also the gods, or at one god at least. And then it says unemu zemusen I think, you know what, I think this is actually plural. Yeah, so maybe that's what it is. It's the gods. So he is living off the gods. Unemu zemus, and the reason why I knew this is because sen is plural, so it's third person plural. That means it's plural up here as well. So he's living off of, or he's eating rather. Unemu means he's eating. He eats. Zemusen means their intestines, their bowels. Okay, so now it's going to start getting gory, zombie-ish, basically. So he's eating their bowels, and now here comes something extremely interesting. So who are these gods whose bowels he's eating? And this is going to be a big surprise for you, because they are the Ayuu, the ones who were coming. Mehi means filled. Shetsen means their bellies, their bodies, their stomachs. Filled their stomachs. Sen is plural again, them. So the ones who came. So Ayu are. So let me back up here. So he's Unas eats the bowels of the ones who came with full bellies. With their full bellies, or with their bellies full of what? Of Heka, okay? And Hekau. So that's Heka magic, okay? So he's basically acquiring the Heka magic of the primordial gods that came from where they came, Ayu, which is the island of the island. No, it says Ayu Nesisi. And here's the fire sign, and here's the place sign. So the island of fire. The island of fire is the primordial island from where the original creator gods came in ancient Egyptian mythology. And so what Unas is basically doing is he's consuming the magic, or he's learning the magic. That's the metaphor, from the deepest recess, from the deepest bowels of the original creator gods, the Pautiu, that have their bellies full of magic, and these gods came from the island of fire, okay? And so this island of fire is where, this is obviously not in ancient Egypt. This is a distant place, somewhere else out in the sea, or in the sky, in the universe, who knows, where these original creator gods came from. So it indicates that they did not come from ancient Egypt, but they came from somewhere else. And that's, we get this little tidbit over here. In another part of the pyramid text, we learn that Unas brings order to the island of fire, and removes chaos. And this is, I believe this was on the southern wall, and I spoke about this a couple of presentations ago. Oh yeah, actually, you know what? I think it's on the west gable. It might be on the west gable, the one that I talked about yesterday. I can't remember right now, but it's easy to check. But anyway, so we have a few tidbits here and there. I think it's on the west gable. Yeah, so on the west gable, we mentioned the island of fire, and here now on the opposite chamber wall, on the east gable, we also mentioned the island on fire. So here we come to find out that these gods, even though there was chaos on this island and Unas brought order to it, that the gods that came from there are the primordial creator gods, and they had this Heka magic that Unas is after, and he is acquiring it almost by force, basically, by eating these gods. But again, it's just a metaphor. It means he's learning it from them. Okay, and then it continues. Unas pai. Unas is the one. Operu. Oper means to be equipped. So oper is a term that's also used in construction in ancient Egypt. It has to do with gangs of workers that were subdivided into smaller units, and they were again subdivided. So this comes from construction, but in this case, but these are not just any kind of workers. They're equipped. They're skilled workers. So you can translate oper as skill or equipped, being equipped. So oper, and then it says I. This is the reed sign. It stands for I. This is the arm. It stands for aw. And this is the leg, which stands for B. So these are all monoliterals, very, very common signs. So ayob means to have collected, to have gathered. So Unas is the one who gathers or collects, okay, his skill, and then here is the achuf. Achu means the masterfulness. His Achu is basically being a Heka master. If you are equipped, if you are skilled in Heka magic, you become a creator. Okay, you can create, you can self-create, you can resurrect, and so that's what Achu stands for. Achuf means his masterfulness. So he has basically gathered his skill. And it says Peru Ayob Achuf. So his masterfulness is gathered, his effectiveness is gathered. So he's basically collecting his effectiveness, his skillfulness and his masterfulness after having eaten it, taken it basically, or learned it from the primordial creator gods from the island of fire. And then what happens is Ayu Unas Cha. So Unas now appears. Unas appears Ur as the great one. Ur means this is a swallow, and it has that arched back. And when you have this bird, it means the great. So he appears as the great. Masterfulness, skillfulness. He is perfect at this point. Almost perfect, and you will see why in when you continue reading, because he's not done yet. He's still learning. And then it says pu. Yeah, it says ha. So Unas appears as the great. Appears as the great one. He is Urpu, and then it says. Urpu Lord Imayu Urpu Neb. Oh yeah, okay. It says he appears as the great one. He's the Lord of the Imayu. Imayu are the ones that are. Imayu means the ones that are in something, and in hieroglyphic, you can sort of understand that as the ones who played a role of something. They are inside of some role. They're inside of some skin, or inside of some entity. So being inside, as you can see, Kas and Bas, the ancient Egyptians had the belief that the body, the physical body, is separate from what inhabits it, the life force and the soul and the shadow. All of these things can leave the body, and so you can inhabit the body, you can dwell inside, but you can also leave it. So it's something that's basically removable, replaceable. And that's how you can understand. This is a very common phrase, Aimayu, the ones that are in some kind of role. So what is this role? Well, it's the Aiset Aui. This is the sign for the two arms. And so he's the Lord of the ones that are inside of the place of the arms. And so this is an interesting, it's concretely, when you translate like this, it might not make any sense, but what this actually means is that these are the ones that are in place of his arms. Okay, so he's the Lord of the ones that are in place of his arms. What that basically means is they are his extensions, and that you can translate it as his servants or his assistants, the ones that do work for him. So he's the Lord of his assistants. This is how Alan translates it. And then Hemesef or Hemsef means he sits. And then here's now a symbol that is pronounced sa, and it's not used as a phonogram. It's not used to just be the sound of something to use in spelling, but it's actually the word itself of what's shown here. And we know that because of this logogram sign here. So what does this mean? Sa means back. So that means he's sitting, his back. Air means, is a preposition, means near or against something or near something. And this is the goose, and that stands for Geb, which is the earth god. So he's basically sitting with his back to the earth god, looking out into the sky. Okay, he's the Lord of his assistants. He's appearing as the Great One. He is he is equipped. He's masterful, full of magic that he's acquired from the primordial gods. He's eaten it from the bowels of the primordial gods from the island of fire. And this is Unas basically presenting himself as the bull of the sky with rage in his heart, living on the appearance of these special gods. Okay, so this is the overall theme. And I know sometimes you get lost in the details of the translation, but remember how this all started. This whole text started with basically the earth and the sky were trembling. Everybody was in shock and awe. Things that were moving stood still. And why? Because Unas is coming out in full force. He has this huge appetite for magic, and he's basically eating his forefathers, living off of his forefathers. He's he's consuming his foremothers. And his powers are so great that they even exceed the power of the father who bore him, and that's of course Atum. We know that from other places, other parts of the pyramid text. And then he has all of his equipment with him. So he has his cars. He's at the front of the cars. He has he's sitting on top of his servants, his Hemsutef. He has the gods are above him, and his cobra, his protective spirits are on his braided hair, and his power snake, his cobra, the Seshemut is on his forehead. So this is kind of the overall theme. So now let's go to the final column. And so what this says is Unas pi. So Unas is the one. But this is a complicated text here. So I'm going to try the best to make sense of it for you. So it says Unas is the one. Uja. So this is a triliteral. So it's 3 consonants all in one, and it also functions as a word. So Uja means to judge. Very similar in English. Uja, judge, right? So Uja, and then this is the sign for word, and then here is a papyrus scroll. That means it's an abstract word. So we're not using, what is meant here is not words itself, but an abstraction of word. So Uja, Medu, his words, but in an abstract sense. And this is the problem. We don't exactly know what those words, his words are, but since we have Uja, which means judge, what this brings up is basically a tribunal, a court proceeding. And if you remember on the south wall, it begins basically with Unas being judged by the tribunal of Tefen and Tefnut, the double line. And so so that is where this comes from. So in this case, however, he's judged by the words, okay, and presumably, so the way this is translated by Alan is that this is the accusation against him or the case against him. So that's why it's an abstraction. So words, having words with someone, for example, in English means you're having some kind of contest, you're having an argument. So that's how you could understand it. So words, his words are being judged. Then here we have hena, which means with. And then here we have aimen, which is invisibility. And then it says nai means is a negation, so it's negative, renev, which means in this case without his name. Okay, so there is somebody invisible that is basically judging a case against Unas. That's how you could translate this. And invisibility, Amun, is an aspect of nature that does come from, is part of the Pautiu, is part of the original, the primordial gods, the Ogdoad, for example, the four pairs of male and female gods. Amun, invisibility, is one of those aspects. So in the very early cosmos, so to speak, the four initial forces of nature, of chaos, basically, when you have water, darkness, you have a good way to think of it is when you read, for example, Genesis, in the first day of creation, God sort of hovers above this primordial land, and then you just have air, you have space, and that's it. So there's darkness, there's no light yet, and so this is sort of an equivalent of what you can think of what Amun means. So Amun is one of those powers of natures that were present in the very, very early chaos of existence. Okay, so that's the context for this. So Una's being judged, basically, a case is being judged against him by a nameless power of nature, which is invisible. And then it says here, Ra Pu. So it's the day. Ra in this case is not the sun. It's because there's a logogram. So in this case, it means day, not the sun god. So Ra Pu, it's the day. It's the day it is. Or it's on the day, basically, of and reches. And then here's a blade. Rechev is the slaughter or butchering of Semsu. Semsu means elder. So this is a really interesting now metaphor, because now what we're talking about is now I can explain this to you, because the original four forces of nature form part of the Hermopolitan cosmogony, and the chief deity is the moon. So before the sun came, before the world, the light was there was darkness and chaos and water and invisibility, and the moon was already there. Okay, so the moon is Thoth, and the way you can figure this out is that you have basically, remember what I said on the south wall, we're heading for new moon, right? So it's a waning moon that's gradually getting older and older and older, and it becomes sickle shaped, right? As it becomes older and older, it's basically like the sharp little sickle, and then it disappears, and that is what is being insinuated here. So we have this, the judgment of Unas basically happens on the day of new moon, when the moon is invisible, and that's what I meant without a name. So it's basically a moon that ceases to be a moon, which is why it doesn't have a name, and that is the judgment day, so to speak, for Unas at this point, right? So this is beautifully done, absolutely gorgeous. So it is on the day when the elder, which is the elder moon, the waning moon, is getting slaughtered. And what happens after that? Well, you have new moon, and that's when you have judgment day, which is when the moon is invisible. Absolutely fascinating. Yeah. So then let's finish this. So it says then Unas, this is Hetepet, and this means Thas or Gao. So basically it means he's making offerings, He's tying. Thas means to tie, or ora. This is a determinative that indicates that we're talking about a rope or something. So a leash is how Alan translates this. So he's making offerings. He's tying on a leash, and aout, and then here's bread, here's wine, and here is some other food item. And so what this means is aout means long, extending. Aout means making, extending, and or presenting in this case. That's a more sophisticated way to say it. So he's basically tying on the leash, and he's presenting offerings. And then here it says Jessef, and that means he's doing it himself. So he is not, no one is making the offerings for him, he's making it himself. And what does this mean right after what we just talked about here is that he's basically traveling on the ecliptic, heading for new moon when Judgment Day comes. And so the way you could interpret this is, well, in order to be judged favorably, he has to make offerings, and he doesn't have anyone to do it for him. He has to do it himself, and he's self-sufficient because he has the equipment. As you remember, he's fully mastered, he's equipped, he's masterful, he has all of his powers with him. So he is fully capable to, as a spirit now, to make his own offerings, to basically appease the final judge, which is basically the moon, Thoth. And of course, from later texts from the Book of the Dead, we know that Thoth presides over Judgment Day at the scale of Mad, when you weigh the feather versus the heart. So all of this makes sense. But so now here we're in the Old Kingdom. And so the nice thing is here now you see the origins of all of these images that you see in the New Kingdom. The origin is really astronomical, as you can see. So it really is based on astronomy. It's just metaphorically presented in this way. So it's beautifully done. So, and that's it. So I know that was a little bit long, but I think it's worth it sometimes to go through the textual analysis and this detail, and that way. And this is a very important part of the pyramid text, the Cannibal hymn. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time. And that's it. So, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to upload, then record the next part. Okay, that's it.